All right, and welcome to a short and sweet Rosh Hashanah webinar. Tonight we are going to have a Rosh Hashanah Seder. So what is a Rosh Hashanah Seder? I'm so glad that you asked. There are many customs that have evolved around all of our different holidays, and it's no surprise to anyone who's ever done a year in the life of Jewish holidays that a lot of them are food-based. Rosh Hashanah is not at all an exception. And so we're going to look at some food-based rituals and traditions that have come about over the last few thousand years, particularly within the Sephardi tradition. So let's get started with what I've got prepared. Here we go. All right, so a Rosh Hashanah Seder. There is a text in the Babylonian Talmud by a rabbi named Abaye who says, they're just in the middle of a discussion. The discussion is about whether or not reading signs and portents, omens, really means anything. And after they conclude that, yes, there might be something in fact to it, Abaye says, now that you said that an omen does have significance, right, there is importance to symbolism, then a person should always be accustomed to seeing these following things on Rosh Hashanah: squash and fenugreek and leeks and beets and dates. So I'm going to stop for a second and ask, do you have any idea what those things have in common? Squash and fenugreek and leek and beets and dates? Does anything come to mind in those ideas, in those foods? You have to raise your hand just a little bit, wiggle your fingers so I know that you want to say something. Go ahead, Len.
Is it they grow in the ground?
So,
except for dates, really, I guess.
All things that grow, right? And as we are going through the cycle of the year, we want to grow, right? We don't want to just stay static as an inert seed in a pod. We want to grow, we want to flourish, and we want there to be a fruitful year. So each of these has different symbolism behind it. And I want to talk for a second about the importance of symbols. So, whoops, where am I? Here I am. So symbols, Judaism is all about symbols in many, many places. Because what it does is it takes an idea. Ideas can be hard to wrap our minds around, and it gives us something concrete, something that we can really take a bite out of. And with these symbols, we are able to take an idea and put it into the physical world and fully enmesh all of our senses in this physicality. And when we are fully into the symbol, then it reminds us, right? They serve as reminders of all of these things that we want, all these things that we want to do, right? So some of the symbols of Rosh Hashanah, some of them, can anybody name one? Name one symbol of Rosh Hashanah. Just wiggle a finger so I know you want to say something. Len again.
Pomegranate?
A pomegranate, good. We'll talk about the pomegranate more in a minute, but absolutely, a pomegranate is a symbol of Rosh Hashanah. A lot of things that are round become symbols of Rosh Hashanah because the year, the calendrical year is in a cycle, it goes around, and also because of the Ma'agal HaChaim, the circle of life, that it goes around, and that we're thinking a lot about it this time of year, about what does it mean for life to go around and for us to be part of this this process of life and death that we can't escape and is very important. We think about it at this time of year. So we have a bunch of symbolic foods that exist based on this custom that evolved mostly within the Sephardic world in order to celebrate and to wish for blessings for the next year. That we take our hopes and our dreams for the next year, the things that we really want for us to have, that we want to embody, that we want to consume us and to flourish, and we give them physical form in these shapes. So let's take a look at what some of them are. So these are the things that you're going to want to go and buy, right? In addition to the wine and the challah that you would ordinarily purchase, or you might make some round challahs of your own, round like the year. For this list, you'll need some dates, some pomegranates, apples and honey, of course. It says green beans, but they can be any kind of beans. Black-eyed peas are particularly popular. Pumpkins or gourds, beets or beetroot leaves or even spinach, leeks, scallions or chives, and the last one here, it says a head of lettuce, but we'll talk more about the head, ironically, when we get to the end. So here are those steps. We start our mitzvah meal. We start our Seder of Rosh Hashanah with Kiddush. Then we'll say Shehecheyanu, the blessing for when we have new things, and thanking God for having brought us and sustained us to this moment. And then we'll get into all of the symbols of the dates and the pomegranate, the apples and honey, the beans, the pumpkin, the beets, the leeks, the head. And then we wash our hands, we make hamotzi, we eat the meal. And then we finish with Birkat HaMazon, our prayers of thanks to God for the bounty that we have enjoyed and being able to see our blessings manifest and then put them in our stomachs. So we start with Kiddush, right? Kiddush is a cup of wine or a cup of grape juice, and the wine itself is a symbol of joy, right? Anyone who enjoys to have a glass of wine will understand why wine is a symbol of joy. It adds a little bit of levity. It makes you feel a little bit lighthearted. And so we start all of our festivals and all of our holidays, Shabbat and all of the Chagim, with Kiddush, with a sanctification of the day. We say, today is special. And how do I mark something that's special in Judaism? How do I mark off extra time that I spend with God and with my community and in a state of holiness? Well, I'm going to do that with joy, right? So our first symbol is a symbol of joy. And the words of the Kiddush are about Rosh Hashanah being Yom HaZikaron, that Yom Zikaron is a day of remembrance. It's the day when God is remembering us. It's the day when we are remembering our history and the past year and who we have been. I might even say from a quasi-Kabbalistic place that we are remembering who our true selves are and wanting to return to that place, wanting to be our best selves, our purest selves that are our souls. So we begin with Kiddush. And then we'll get to the Simanim. So Simanim literally means symbols. And these Simanim, what happens is that there's a series of, really they're bad puns, which is why I love them so much, is that what will happen is that for each of these symbols, each of these Simanim, there will be a statement of Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will. And so this Seder, this Rosh Hashanah Seder is also called the Seder Yehi Ratzon. The order, right? Seder means an order of the things that we ask for, that it should be God's will, that our year should be like X and like Y. And what's going to happen for each of these things is that what they are, the name of what they are is going to be used, is going to be manipulated in some wordplay in order to say the thing that it is that we're wishing for. So for instance, when we eat apples and honey, we do that for a sweet new year. That's one very literal way, but let's look at some of the ways that the language plays out. We're going to start with the dates. So the Hebrew word for a date is a Tamar. And so the Yehi Ratzon says, Yehi Ratzon milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei Avotenu, She'itmenu sonenu, She'itmu sonenu. That word Tamar, if you, let's see, can I draw? I can draw. If you look at this word over here, She'itmu, right, has the same letters as Tamar, the Taf and the Mem. And what that word actually means is that Yitmu, they should end. There should be a finishing. The translation that I found here says, the ones who hate us should be consumed. They should find an end to their hatred, or they should find an end to their maybe to themselves if it's their enemies. And we can always see when we see sonenu and oivenu, these words that mean the people who hate and are enemies, right? We can always look outward and say, well, there are people out there that hate me personally, right? Somebody doesn't like me. It's possible. Or even more possible and unfortunate is there are people who just don't like Jewish people, right? There are people who are anti-Semitic and we want them to, we want an end to them. So it might be that we want an end to actually the people, and then it's a little bit cruel. We're asking for their death. There's a wonderful passage in the Talmud where I believe it's Rabbi Meir, I could be wrong. Rabbi Meir says that he's had some hoodlums, some brigands who have been bothering him in the neighborhood, stealing things and making noise and breaking things. And he says, he's praying that they should die. And his wife comes in and says, does it say that sinners should die? And she quotes him a pasuk that says there should be an end to sin. It doesn't say sinners should end. It says sins should end. And so what we're actually praying for is that they should do tshuva, that they should do repentance, and that hate that they have should be ended. But we can also take this and look at ourselves and say the hate that lives in us, the inner enemy that we have, right? Our yetzer hara, our inclination to do evil. That's what should end. That should come to an end. It should be consumed by our drive and our desire to do tshuva, to be good, to repent, and to be on the right path. And then we eat the dates. Dates are delicious. I love dates. They're another way to be sweet. And also dates are one of the 7 species that the Torah tells us grows in the land of Israel. But wait, before we eat the dates, we have to say a blessing. Because at this point, we've only said the blessing for the wine, Borei Pri Hagafen. So we also now will say the blessing for fruit, right? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Borei Peri Ha'etz. Blessed are you, God, ruler of the universe, who creates the fruit of the tree. And then we'll start to eat some fruit. So we start with the dates, and then we move on to the Rimon, the pomegranates. So it'll be Yehi Ratzon milfanecha Hashem Elokeinu v'kei avotenu, shenivre zechuyotenu cherimon. That our merits should increase like the seeds of a Rimon. So what do you know about a pomegranate? Right? If you take a look, where is it? Over here. So there we go. Take a look in the background behind me. You can see the pomegranate. The thing that's most obvious about it is that it's full of seeds. Here. And so the pomegranate, which is full of seeds, Talmud tells us that it's analogous to mitzvot, that there are 613 mitzvot, and that we want to be full of mitzvot. We want to be spending our time engaging in these good deeds and these commandments, and just like the Rimon, and so it should also have that sweetness. And also, one thing about a pomegranate, right? If you notice, there we go, over here. It's all backwards. That there's the little tiny pieces that you can eat, the seeds, and then there's all this pith. There's all this, or maybe it's a rind, all this outside that's inedible. Pro tip, if you want to eat a pomegranate, a good way to get the seeds out is to cut it and put it in a bowl of water and then push it all out and let the seeds float to the top. But that is not a Shabbat approved activity, and so you should do that before the holiday this year. So in that same way, we want to be able to take the good, take the mitzvot, take the sweet part, take the seeds, and we want to be able, for ourselves, right, as a process, we want to be the mitzvot and the good things, and we want to be able to separate from the husk, the part that isn't good for us, the part that is maybe our physicality that enwraps our souls, and be able to say, I'm going to focus on the good stuff on the inside and make sure that I get the best of it out there. So we should have merits like the seeds of the Rimon. And then, of course, everybody's favorite, apples and honey. Right? Yehi ratzon milfanecha Hashem Elokeinu v'kei avotenu, shetichadesh aleinu shana tova umetuka. that we should have a year that is good and sweet. And so we take our round apples, round again representing the cycle of the year and the cycle of our lives, and then we dip it in honey, which is a sign of sweetness. Now, in the Torah, it says that Israel is an Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash. It is a land dripping with milk and honey. The honey that it means there is actually date honey, right? Dates, if you let them sit on the tree a little bit long, sometimes they ooze some sweet stickiness. In Hebrew, it's called silan. It's delicious. I've got a jar in my cupboard waiting for Rosh Hashanah because that's what I use instead of bees' honey. But still, the idea of connecting honey is another way, right? Just like the dates and also the Rimon, also the pomegranate, those are fruits that are native to the land of Israel and that the Torah talks about. Whoops. There we go. Okay, so after we have our Rimon, we switch to beans. Now, in Aramaic, right, which is not Hebrew, Aramaic is the language of the Talmud. It's the language, it was actually the spoken language of the ancient Near East for the better part of a millennium. And it became the lingua franca of the Jews. And so the word for beans, it can be Rubia or Lubia, depending on which kind of beans you're talking about. And so we say, Yehi ratzon milfanecha Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei avotenu, sheyirbu zechuyotenu utlabivenu, that our merits should increase, right, just like with the Rimon, and tilabivenu, right, you can see in there's the word lev. And the word lev means a heart. And so just like the Lubia, the beans, we want God to hearten us. We want God to put goodness into our hearts. We want our next year to be one that is thoughtful and intentional and full of compassion. And so we eat the beans. But before we eat the beans, very important, a blessing. So for things that come from trees, we say borei pre'etz, but things that grow from the ground, vegetables like beans, we say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam, borei peri ha'adama. Blessed are you, God, our ruler of the universe, who creates the fruit of the earth. And then we have some more vegetables. So a pumpkin or a gourd in Aramaic is a kara. And the Hebrew word karet means to cut or to tear. It gets used, the expression that you cut a deal is actually a several thousands-year-old expression from the Bible, where God, for instance, is with Abraham and is making him a deal saying, your offspring will be as numerous as the stars of the sky and the sand on the beach. And the word for that, what you do with that brit, that covenant, is you are koret brit. You cut that covenant. You cut that deal. So we want something cut as well. What is that? Yehi ratzon milfanecha Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei avotenu, shetikre ro gezera dinenu, ro gezar dinenu, v'yikra'u lefanecha zechuyotenu. May it be your will, eternal, the eternal, our God and God of our ancestors, to tear away, to cut up, to chop off all of the evil decrees, right? That anything that might be bad that's coming our way in the year to come, that let that be cut away and left on the side, and instead let us be focused on our merits, right? God should only see the good pieces of us and leave the bad pieces on the cutting room floor. Now, the word in there, shetikra, right, both means to cut. It can also mean to read. And so we see the root being used twice, right? I love the puns. So here it is the first time, shetikra, that God should tear away the bad decree. And also, v'yikru lefanecha, that all of our merits, all of the good things about us, right? This is this image of these three books that are open on Rosh Hashanah, There's the good, the book of all the good, and the book of all the bad, and the book of all the in between. And all of our deeds are written down and being judged by God and being evaluated. So God should read in those books only our merits, only the good things. And this is one of my favorite. I really love beets. They're sweet and they're delicious. They're nature's candy, don't you know? So usually it's the beet greens or maybe some spinach or chard, same sort of deal. But the Hebrew word for beets is selek. And so we say, with another one of these tummy-tickling puns, Yehi ratzon milfanecha Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei avotenu sheyistalku oivenu. Right? Did you hear it? Selek, yistalku. So may it be your will, the eternal, our God and God of our ancestors, that our adversaries be removed. Yistalek means to take away. Right? And so in the same way that we had the dates where we're asking for our enemies or for the ones who hate us to have an end, so here we're asking for them to be removed. I really like to focus on the inner piece for that. That when who is my biggest enemy, right? Who's the person in the world standing most in my way? No question, zero doubt, it's me. I could be doing so much. I could be so great if I would just get out of my way. Sometimes it's self-doubt that holds us back. Sometimes it's negative self-image. Sometimes it's just a not knowing that that there is something else I could be doing and that I haven't taken the time and the effort to think about and find a new way. And so in this year, yes, our external adversaries, our external enemies should definitely be removed, but also the internal ones, the things that stand in our way, the things that are going to keep our year from being good and sweet, that are going to stop me internally from living a life of mitzvot and having all of those merits that we've been talking about. Those things should be removed as well. Now we come to the leeks. I love the leek, scallion, chive, some sort of onion with a green piece on top. The image that it always brings up for me is that there's another Sephardi tradition on Passover, when we have the Passover Seder, to take a leek and to hit each other over the head with it. To take a onion type vegetable and hit each other over the head with it. So the one second. So the Yehi ratzon here is Yehi ratzon milfanecha Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei avotenu sheyikartu oivenu v'sonenu v'chol mivakshei ra'atenu. May it be your will, God and God of our ancestors, that our enemies, the haters, those who wish us harm, that they should be cut down. And it's again that root yikartu means to be cut away, and the same the leeks, the scallions, the chives is also using that same root. It's similar to the gourds. Oh, also, we were talking about the pumpkin. I forgot to mention the gourds. So we can eat pumpkin, but I have the custom of buying decorative gourds on Rosh Hashanah and leaving them out around the room or on the table. And then, you know what I do with them? I wait a couple of weeks, and Sukkot comes, and I hang them for my sukkah as part of the decoration in the skach. I also take some fishing wire and a couple of apples and hang those too. Although the squirrels really, really love those. The gourds they don't touch so much, usually because they're lacquered. And last but not least, really first, is a head. What do you mean a head? Yes, I really mean a head. It is a long-standing custom in Edot HaMizrach, in Mizrahi culture, in Sephardic culture, that you would put possibly a goat's head or possibly a fish head on the table, on your Rosh Hashanah table. Because there is a verse in the Torah that says that we will come out like the head and not the tail, that we will be the top and not the bottom. It is a promise of being not suppressed, not oppressed, but really being able to forge our own future, right? When you are the head, right? Well, let's read the Hiratzon. Hiratzon lefanach Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Avotenu, shenehiyeh lerosh velo lezanav, right? We should be like the rosh, like the head, and not like the zanav, like the tail. So what is it about a head that's so great? So first of all, it's Rosh Hashanah, right? It is the head of the year. It's the beginning. So a Rosh, yes, physically means a head, but it also means a beginning. So we should have a beginning where we're looking forward, right? Where we're looking ahead at what's coming and not dwelling on what's behind us, not the tail. And in that way, we are masters of our own fates. We are be able to look at the future and able to lead our ways, right? When you have the head, you can turn the head whichever way you need it to go and go in that direction. The tail always has to follow wherever the head is going. So we should be like the head and not the tail. Now, I also understand that not everybody wants to put a fish head on their Rosh Hashanah table. All the more so, kal v'chomer, a goat's head. So I encourage you, if you'd like to put a head on your table, get a head of lettuce or a head of cabbage. Those are other good ways that are nice and food related to join in symbolically. One of the things that I think is really important to share is that there are different ways to present these foods as well. We have been looking at them. Actually, if we go back to the beginning of my very nice slideshow, at least I think it's a very nice slideshow, all the way. Sorry. Right, you can see in the background there's a whole Seder plate, and I actually have a Seder plate like this. So here's the gourd, and there's the dates. You can see black-eyed peas on this one, and beets, and it actually says a sheep's head in the top right-hand corner, and the pomegranates in the left. But you don't have to do it that way. It doesn't have to be fully looking at, right? Looking at it is one way, right? Abaye says you should look at them, you should see them, you should have them. But another way to do it is that you can have a great menu for Rosh Hashanah, right? Maybe you're having wild rice with dates and apricots. Maybe you're making apple pie for dessert. Work with what you've got. You can definitely work with, between the beets and the beans and all the fruits, you've got at least 4 or 5 different courses that you can put out. So I encourage you to be creative and enjoy what you're doing. I started with rice because I mentioned Sephardi rituals, so Sephardi meals are always going to have rice at them. So if you really want to do a traditional somewhere in there, you should definitely have some rice. I hope that everyone has a sweet year that is full of meaning, is full of joy, is full of happiness, that all of our negative traits should be cut away from us, should come to an end, that all of our zechuyot, all of our merits, all of the good that lives inside of us should be given free rein in the year to come, that we should be able to make the year sweet by doing good things, by being sweet people, and by letting the goodness that lives on the inside out. I wish you all a Shana Tova Umetuka, a happy and a sweet new year.